Anteris Technologies is a structural heart company focused on developing innovative and durable health solutions. Held its AGM in Sydney today. Fresh from that to discuss the company's strategy is CEO Wayne Paterson, who joins me now in the studio. Hi Wayne, so you flew in from the US for this. Just tell us how the AGM went and how you updated shareholders.
Yeah, thanks Juliette. So I think the AGM was really good. It's always great to interact with shareholders. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with people who come to the meeting. All resolutions were passed. And I was able to update the markets on where we were headed basically this year, what to look forward to in the next 12 months.
And one of the things that you're looking forward to is the progress for the FDA approval and trial stages of the next generation heart valve, DurAVR. Just tell us a little bit about that.
So DurAVR was created over the past number of years with a very deliberate design brief, which was to fill a gap in what is a $15 billion market globally for the treatment of aortic stenosis, which is a fatal disease. If it's left untreated, 50% of patients die within 2 years, and there's no pharmacotherapy. So basically you have to change out that valve, which is what we've done. So over that number of years, with a very clear approach to a market gap, we managed to design a product that actually fitted the gap with a lot of input from physicians in the US, globally, and even from down here as well. We got through our phase 2, or what's called the EFS in medtech, with about 30% superiority to the market leader. Now in that $15 billion market, the market leader has about 65% market share. So it's a very limited number of competitors in that space. We are now hitting our what's called pivotal or phase 3. If you're a pharma investor, you might know it as a phase 3. We're just going through getting the protocol finalized and approved by the FDA at the moment.
So what's the next step, or what's the timeline, I guess, for potential FDA approval?
Yeah, so we are just debating backwards and forwards on structure, biostats, those kind of things. We're very, very close. I never want to second guess the FDA. That's not a good thing to do. So we are within a window of several months here by the time we get that protocol approved and then go through the process of actually beginning the trial.
So you tapped the market for $23 million in April. How is that going then? Do you need to tap the market for more, or where are you sitting?
Yeah, so the last raise I was very happy with. It was probably the first time in our history where we've raised that market without options or warrants or anything along that line. I think it shows the confidence of our largest investors. That capital takes us through, getting into this year where we are, of course, through several areas. One, of course, is the pivotal protocol approval. The other is finishing up another project we have in the mitral valve space. And so we're good for capital at the moment. Of course, as we get into the trial, we're going to need more capital moving forward.
I think globally, heart disease is one of, or if not the biggest cause of death. What does DurAVR do then in terms of giving an option to, say, open heart surgery? Right,
so that's a great question, Juliette. I think the aortic stenosis disease, like I said, is not one you can treat with a drug. So you're basically switching out a piece of the anatomy, and that is the aortic valve. Now, in days gone by, they would open your chest up, put you on bypass surgery and go in and take that valve out and replace it with a valve that doesn't necessarily look like the one you were born with, but it does the job, it opens and closes. There is a core group of patients who are unable to have that procedure because their risk of mortality on the table is too high. So these valves were developed to be delivered by a catheter. So instead of opening up someone's chest, you put it through the femoral artery around the groin area, drive it up over the aorta, put the valve in place and withdraw the catheter. So getting the valve in place without opening up the patient's chest. Obviously the upside of that is the procedure time is under an hour, about 20 minutes to land that valve with our product now, versus up to 4 or 5 hours for an open heart procedure. Of course, a lot of the associated risks are not there, and the recovery time is much, much shorter. I see our patients now, they're up and out of hospital the next morning and looking fantastic.
Wow, and so is this sort of the next generation too of moving away from sort of, sometimes we look at other animals as well in terms of valve transplants?
Yeah, so I mean, there's been pig valves, everybody knows about those. I think it is. I mean, I think a valve is a very complex piece of anatomy to manufacture, and in fact the valves that are currently on the market don't resemble the valve in your body, so they have limitations. We took a very different approach and created the first new class of valve in over a decade called a biomimetic valve. So it looks like the one in your body. It's not quite as simple as that, but it basically is giving pre-disease hemodynamic results, which is how they measure this disease, which has not been achieved before. So we are definitely moving away from that because we've now been able to create anatomically correct valves, for want of a better term.
So just getting to, I guess, the business side of this, how big is this market if so many people have heart disease or may potentially need a system like this?
And so I mean, one, it's great to be treating patients with a product like this that is actually giving them a pre-disease outcome, almost a curative result that hasn't happened before. Second is the market is, like I said before, 15 billion Australian, 10 billion US, roughly how we look at it. That market right now is massive, and it's only capturing about 15 to 20% of patients who are treated. So the patient pool is much, much bigger. This market is growing very rapidly. There is a secondary market called valve-in-valve, which is patients who are currently getting valves that are not our product, DurAVR, that are failing after 5 years. And so there's another 30% on top of that, so maybe another $3 billion US. So the market is quite big. The penetration into the patient population is relatively small.
So how much of the market would you hope Anteris would be able to capture potentially?
I mean, I think over time, this product was designed to fill a gap,
Yeah.
and that gap is an unmet medical need. The market leader has 65-70% market share. We're about 30% superior to that product. It's a two-horse race right now between that player and another one. We're the third entry here. We've passed the phase 2 study, the EFS study, with incredible results, 30% superiority. That's a public number. It's not a study we ran, of course. It's run by third parties. And so you would expect over time to absolutely achieve at least in the range of 20, 30, 40%, because the market leader is 65. We're a lot more superior than those guys.
You've got a long history in this space. You were telling me before you used to be at Merck. Tell us how you came about working for Anteris Technologies and I guess what you're doing more broadly in Minneapolis.
Yeah, so most of my career, 20-something years, was in big pharma, Merck and Roche around the world. Lived in a lot of countries and was at high levels running president of Europe and global head of cardiovascular medicine and so on. So it does equip you obviously with the knowledge of how to get through FDA processes and so on. My wife and partner is actually from Minneapolis, and at a point in time we decided to head back there to put the kids in school. But as it turns out, Minneapolis is the medtech center of the world. So all of the big medtech companies are globally headquartered there. What does it mean? It means you've got a lot of infrastructure. A lot of the talent that you need to do this kind of development work is centered in one place. For pharma, it's New Jersey. Globally, for medtech, it's actually Minneapolis. Also the labs, the cadaver labs, the animal labs, all the things we need to do to move quickly are concentrated in that city.
Having been in Australia though recently for the AGM and I guess to see your team, how impressed are you by where Australia is at this space, in this space as well?
Yeah, I think medtech and medical in general is fantastic in Australia. I mean, I started life here. I always managed Australia as one of my countries in pharma. The level of research in this country is fantastic. Still a relatively small market commercially, but way above its weight for research. So I see a lot of great companies. I see Telex just reading out of phase 2 very recently. We have companies like Cochlear and then ResMed doing fantastic work. It's a small number of medtechs, but the ones we have are really brilliant. Anteris will be another one of those.
All right, let's look at your share price. When you look over the past year, not great, look at the next 5 years, or a broader picture, I should say, it's performed quite well. I know you can't control the market, but just in terms of where, particularly if you get FDA approval, you'd like to see sort of fair value.
Yeah, so I think we actually have a net present value model. It's a math model. It's not speculative per se. It's obviously different to our market cap, which, you know, you can argue sometimes the market gets it right, sometimes it doesn't. I think one of the things with this company is the market doesn't necessarily understand the lack of risk that we have, maybe relative to a drug. When you've come out your phase 2 with superiority, a medtech product has a very, very low chance of failure in the clinic at phase 3. So we're highly de-risked. The numbers don't change, so the data is going to be really good, or it is good. The stock is up about 210% in the last several years. That's pretty good. Market cap is up about 1,800% in the last 4 years. However, the net present value, and if you look at the market leader right now, they have a $70 billion market cap on their TAVR device, and we're actually 30% better than that TAVR device. So you can let your imagination do the math, but it is significant multiples of where we are today. So
if all of that looking very rosy, what's sort of your growth plans or expansionary plans too?
Yeah, so I think the next thing is to get through the phase 3 or the pivotal study with the FDA. It's a relatively quick study. It's the first ever head-to-head randomized study for TAVR approval, so that's great. I'm very happy with where we are today with that. And then you can expect first revenues in 25 as a function of that study and beyond. We will do a stepwise approach. The market is so big, but it's very compact. 20 to 40 centers control a big volume of those billions in the States. And the advisory board that we assembled 4 years ago are physicians in those centers. So we have access to those centers. They've already used the product a lot. And so in a very short period of time, next couple of years, we'll see those approvals come through and those first revenues, and they will accelerate pretty quickly. And
obviously you're waiting for FDA approval. Have you spoken to Canberra as well? What about the hope for Medicare?
Yeah, so you know, I have worked with the TGA for many, many years on different things. The market here, we're looking probably to get some Australian sites into the FDA study. The FDA have agreed to that. If we can get, we've got a couple of Australian physicians who do work with us, and I look forward to getting Australian patients into this as quickly as possible, either through special access or as part of the ongoing pivotal study.